The air was thick with the scent of old paper and ink, a smell I had grown to associate with resignation, both in the literal sense and the emotional one. But this time, things were different. My hands trembled slightly, not with hesitation, but with the sheer force of a realization too powerful to ignore. The thin paper of my resignation letter crinkled under my grip before I tore it into shreds, letting the tiny pieces flutter to the ground like fallen leaves. The principal's eyes widened in surprise. "Emma Carter, are you sure about this?" His voice held an edge of concern. I nodded, my voice steady. "I've made up my mind. I will go teach in the remote mountain areas. I'll leave in half a month." A sharp intake of breath behind me made my heart pound harder. I turned slowly, and there he stood, Ethan Walker, my husband. His piercing eyes burned with restrained anger, his broad shoulders stiff with tension. "Emma Carter, have you lost your mind?" His words came out clipped, barely controlled. "I'm going to the mining site to work so we can have a better future. What's the point of you following me there? Our son is still young, my parents need someone to take care of them. And now you're talking about leaving for some godforsaken place?" His words stung, but not in the way they used to. In my past life, I would have bowed my head, let the guilt sink into my bones, and let my heart shatter a little more. But not this time. I met his gaze without flinching. "I've made my decision, Ethan. And it's final." His jaw clenched. "You're acting irrationally. Think this through. You're not young anymore. You can't just make reckless choices like this." I wanted to laugh. Reckless choices? Hadn't I spent years sacrificing everything for this man, only to be cast aside like an afterthought? Hadn't I abandoned my dreams, my dignity, and even my self-worth to fit into the mold of the wife he wanted me to be? And what had I gotten in return? A life of regret. A life where I had been nothing but a shadow standing behind Ethan and Olivia Brooks. The memories of my past life crashed over me in waves. The cold hospital corridor, my son's sneer as he told me I was unworthy of my own husband, the sheer agony of watching Ethan cradle another woman in his arms while I wasted away. The sting of betrayal cut deep, even now. But instead of drowning in it, I let it sharpen my resolve. I clenched my fists, feeling the sharp edges of my nails press into my palms. "No. Not this time." Ethan scoffed, stepping forward, his towering frame casting a shadow over me. "You think I don't see what you're doing? Playing hard to get? A few days from now, you'll be crying and begging me not to leave you behind." I smiled. It was not the smile of a broken woman. It was the smile of someone who had already won. "If you want to leave, Ethan, go ahead. I won't stop you. But don't expect me to be here waiting when you come back." His face darkened, but before he could respond, he turned abruptly toward the door. "I'm heading to the station to pick up Olivia. Make sure dinner's ready when I get back. And don't forget to buy some pork, Olivia loves pork stew with vermicelli." My heart clenched, but I did not falter. I watched him leave, his footsteps echoing down the hall, each step a reminder of the mistakes I had made in my past life. Today was the day Olivia Brooks would arrive. In my past life, I had greeted her with open arms, naively believing Ethan's words, that she was just an old classmate, a harmless guest. I had waited in line for hours to buy their train tickets, ensuring their comfort while I stood in the crowded carriage with my son and in-laws. I had watched them whisper to each other, steal glances, share quiet laughter, all while I convinced myself it was nothing. This time, I would not be a fool. I paused, gripping the edge of the counter. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, I reached for the pots and pans. I wasn't going to make anything special. I wasn't going to make anything at all. Instead, I stepped out of the house and walked straight to the principal's office, my pulse steady, my resolve unwavering. "Principal," I said firmly. "I've made up my mind. I will go teach in the mountain areas." The principal looked at me, his eyes searching. "Emma, are you sure? Your son is still so young. This isn't a decision you can take back easily." I met his gaze with unshakable determination. I am sure. I want to dedicate my life to something meaningful. I will not waste another second of it. His face softened, and he sighed. Very well. I will process your transfer. But remember, once you leave, there is no turning back. I smiled. That's exactly what I want. By the time I returned home, the sky had darkened, and the house was filled with voices, laughter, conversation, warmth that had never truly belonged to me. Inside, Olivia Brooks sat at the dining table, her delicate fingers wrapped around a porcelain cup, her lips curved into the sweetest smile. My husband sat beside her, picking food onto her plate, his expression one of quiet devotion. Something inside me shattered, but this time I didn't let it break me. Instead, I stepped forward, my voice steady. Ethan turned, his expression instantly souring. Oh, you're finally home? Do you even know what time it is? The whole family has been waiting for you to cook dinner. I inhaled slowly, forcing my emotions down. This time, I would not crumble. I looked at him, at Olivia, at the family that had never truly seen me as one of their own. Then, with a cold, unwavering voice, I spoke the words that would change everything. I have work at school. From now on, I won't be responsible for any of you. The room fell into stunned silence. Ethan's chopsticks slipped from his fingers. My in-laws gawked at me, their mouths slightly open. My son, happily stuffing food into his mouth moments ago, froze mid-bite. And Olivia Brooks? She simply smiled, her eyes glinting with something unreadable. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The stunned silence in the room lingered like a heavy fog. The air was thick with disbelief, as if no one could comprehend the words I had just spoken. I had spent years playing the role of the obedient wife, the dutiful daughter-in-law, the mother who sacrificed everything. But not anymore. Ethan recovered first, his brows knitting together in anger. Emma, what nonsense are you saying? You have responsibilities. You can't just. I cut him off with a smile, a cruel, knowing smile. Oh, I can. And I will. My mother-in-law clutched the edge of the table, her lips quivering. Emma, you can't abandon us. What about Ryan? He's your son. You're his mother. I turned to look at the little boy who had once been my entire world. The boy who, in my past life, had thrown me away like garbage the moment it became convenient. He was staring at me now, eyes wide with confusion. Mommy? I felt a pang in my heart, but it was dulled by the memory of his cold, heartless words from my past life. Mom, look at yourself. Do you really think you're worthy of Dad? I inhaled deeply, steadying myself. Ryan, you'll be fine. Your father will take care of you. Ethan scoffed. You're serious about this, aren't you? You think you can just walk away from this family like we meant nothing? I met his glare with unflinching resolve. You walked away first, Ethan. Long before I ever considered it. You just never had to face the consequences before. But now, you will. From the corner of my eye, I saw Olivia's lips twitch into something almost smug, as if she had already won. As if she had succeeded in taking my place. She had no idea. I turned to her, my voice smooth and cutting. You must be Olivia Brooks. I've heard a lot about you. She tilted her head slightly, her smile innocent, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Oh. Ethan has mentioned me? I let my gaze drift toward my husband, the man who had betrayed me so effortlessly in my past life. Not exactly. But I do remember something. Do you? Her smile faltered for the briefest moment before she masked it with a practiced chuckle. I'm not sure what you mean. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough for her to hear. You will. The tension in the room crackled like a brewing storm. My father-in-law cleared his throat, trying to regain control. Emma, we should sit down and talk about this rationally. There's nothing left to discuss. I straightened, my voice firm. I'm leaving, and that's final. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. You really think you can make it on your own? Without me? Without this family? A slow, knowing smirk curved my lips. Watch me. Without another word, I turned and strode toward my bedroom, leaving behind the stunned expressions of the people who had once dictated my life. I had a plan, and this time, I was the one in control. The weight of my past no longer clung to me as I stepped into my bedroom, my sanctuary from the chaos outside. The voices in the dining room faded into muffled murmurs, but I knew they were still there. Ethan fuming, my in-laws gossiping, Olivia quietly savoring her victory. But what none of them realized was that I wasn't the same woman they had once manipulated. I pulled my suitcase from under the bed, its wheels creaking in protest as I dragged it upright. My hands moved with purpose, folding my limited belongings into neat stacks. For years, I had lived for them, cooking, cleaning, sacrificing my dreams, only to be discarded. No more. As I packed, my mind drifted back to my past life. I had begged Ethan to love me, pleaded for my son's affection, and fought to keep a place in a family that never truly wanted me. And in the end, I had died alone and abandoned. But this time, I would be the one to walk away first. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I turned to see Ethan standing in the doorway, his posture tense. His eyes, once filled with warmth and promises, now held nothing but cold calculation. Emma, he started, voice strained, this isn't you. You're upset right now, but you don't have to do this. Come out, eat with us, and we can talk. I stared at him for a long moment before letting out a soft chuckle. Talk? You mean like how we used to? When you'd ignore everything I said until it was convenient for you? His jaw tightened. This is childish. You're not thinking clearly. I zipped up my suitcase with deliberate finality. On the contrary, I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have. And I've made my decision. He took a step closer, his expression darkening. And what about Ryan? You'd abandon your own son? The mention of my child made my heart twist, but I forced myself to remain resolute. You mean the son who told me I wasn't worthy of you? The son who stood by as you handed me divorce papers, who pushed me away when I had nothing left. Ethan flinched. You'll take care of him, won't you? I continued. Just like you always claimed you would? His silence spoke volumes. I grabbed my suitcase and pushed past him, but he caught my wrist. You don't get to just walk away from this family, Emma. You don't get to rewrite history. I met his gaze, unwavering. No, Ethan. That's exactly what I'm doing. A bitter laugh escaped him. You think you'll be better off alone? You have nothing. No money, no support, no future. Where will you even go? Anywhere that isn't here, I said simply. I turned my head slightly to see Olivia leaning against the hallway wall, arms crossed over her chest, a picture of casual amusement. Her eyes gleamed with satisfaction, as if she had already won. But I knew something she didn't. I wrenched my hand free and strode past them both, dragging my suitcase down the hall. Olivia smirked. I hope you find what you're looking for, Emma. I stopped at the doorway and glanced back at her. Oh, don't worry, Olivia. I already have. With that, I walked out the door and into my new life. The night air was crisp as I stepped onto the quiet street. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. But freedom wasn't enough, I needed a plan. I couldn't just run aimlessly. I needed stability, security, and a future that belonged to me alone. I checked my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. It had been years since I had last spoken to Mr. Callahan, my former college professor, but if anyone could help me find a teaching position in the mountain areas, it was him. The phone rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Hello? Mr. Callahan, it's Emma Carter. I hope I'm not disturbing you. A pause, then a surprised chuckle. Emma? My goodness, it's been years. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I need a fresh start. I want to teach again, and I'm willing to go anywhere. He was silent for a moment before responding. You're serious about this? You're willing to leave everything behind? Yes. There's a school in the mountain region that desperately needs teachers. It's not glamorous, poor conditions, low pay, hard life. But they need someone passionate. Someone like you. I closed my eyes, picturing the life ahead. A life of purpose, where I could finally be appreciated for who I was rather than what I could give. I'll take it. Mr. Callahan sighed. All right, Emma. I'll pull some strings and get you there. But this won't be easy. Are you ready for that? I opened my eyes, determination burning in my chest. I've never been more ready. After ending the call, I made my way to the nearest inn, where I rented a small room for the night. It wasn't much, just a bed, a desk, and a lamp, but it was mine. I sat on the edge of the mattress, running my fingers over the soft fabric of the bedsheet. For the first time in a long time, I had made a choice for myself. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Ethan, Emma, please come home. We need to talk. I stared at the screen, a cold smile forming on my lips. No, Ethan. We have nothing left to say. I turned off my phone and lay back against the pillow. Tomorrow, I would board a train to the mountain region. Tomorrow, my new life would truly begin. And this time, I would make sure I was the one holding the pen to my own story. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of my small rented room, casting golden patterns across the floor. I sat up, feeling an unfamiliar sense of calm. Today, I was boarding the train that would take me to the mountains, to my new life. The weight of my past no longer held me captive. As I packed my few belongings into my worn suitcase, I couldn't help but glance at my phone, half expecting another message from Ethan. He had been relentless since last night, sending text after text. Ethan, Emma, please come home. We need to talk. Ethan, this is insane. You can't just leave everything behind like this. Ethan, at least think about Ryan. He needs his mother. I clenched my jaw, resisting the pull of guilt. He was only saying these things now because he had lost control over me. If I had still been the Emma from my past life, his words would have shattered me. But I was no longer that woman. I stuffed my phone deep into my bag and walked out of the inn without looking back. The streets were quiet in the early morning, the cool breeze refreshing against my skin. As I neared the train station, the platform came into view, bustling with travelers hurrying to catch their trains. I found my seat near the window, watching as the city I once called home slowly came to life. A whistle blew, signaling departure. Just as the train began to move, I spotted a familiar figure pushing through the crowd. Ethan. His face was tense, his hair disheveled, his breathing heavy as he tried to fight against the forward momentum of the train. His mouth opened, his voice lost to the roar of the engine. I simply watched. His desperation did not move me. For years, I had been the one begging, the one hoping for just a fraction of his love. Now, the tables had turned. And I felt nothing but satisfaction. As the train left the station, I leaned back against my seat, finally at peace. The journey to the mountains was long and exhausting. The roads grew narrower, the landscape wilder. By the time I arrived at my destination, the sun was beginning to set. A small, humble village lay nestled between towering peaks, untouched by time. I stepped off the bus, taking in my surroundings. The air was crisp and clean, the scent of earth and pine filling my lungs. Children played in the distance, their laughter echoing in the stillness. A tall, older man approached me, his face lined with years of hard work. You must be Miss Carter. I'm Headmaster Lee, he said, extending a calloused hand. We're grateful to have you here. I shook his hand firmly. It's my pleasure, sir. He led me through the village, past simple wooden houses and fields where villagers worked diligently. It won't be easy, he warned. The school is small, the supplies are few, and the children need more than just an education. They need someone who cares. I smiled. That's exactly why I'm here. He nodded approvingly and guided me to a modest house at the edge of the village. This will be your home. It's not much, but it's warm and safe. I stepped inside, taking in the bare wooden walls, the simple furniture. It was a far cry from the life I had once lived, but for the first time, it felt like home. That night, as I lay in bed beneath a patchwork quilt, I realized something. I had been so consumed with escaping my past that I had forgotten the most important part, building a future. And now, I had the chance to do just that. The next morning, I stood in front of my new classroom. The building was old, the walls cracked, the desks worn from years of use. But the children who sat before me watched with wide, eager eyes, their faces filled with curiosity and hope. "Good morning, class," I greeted, my voice strong and sure. "My name is Miss Carter, and I'm your new teacher." A few giggles rippled through the group, but their excitement was palpable. I had spent my past life giving to people who never appreciated me. Now, I was giving to those who truly needed it. And I had never felt more alive. For the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was meant to be. The days in the village passed in a blur of hard work and quiet fulfillment. Each morning, I woke before dawn, preparing for the lessons ahead. The school was small, the supplies scarce, but the children's eagerness to learn made every struggle worth it. Despite the challenges, I found peace in the simplicity of my new life. There was no longer the weight of a loveless marriage on my shoulders, no whispers of betrayal haunting my every step. Here, I was not Ethan Walker's discarded wife. I was Miss Carter, the teacher who had come to make a difference. One afternoon, as I helped a young girl named Mei Ling with her reading, I noticed a shadow pass across the classroom doorway. When I looked up, my heart nearly stopped. Ethan. He stood there, disheveled and out of place in his expensive city clothes, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The past and present collided in that single glance, but I refused to let my resolve waver. I turned my attention back to Mei Ling. "Try reading that sentence again," I said, ignoring the man at the door. Ethan stepped inside hesitantly, his presence drawing the attention of the students. Whispers spread among them as he approached my desk. "Emma," he said, his voice uncertain. "Can we talk?" I set down my chalk, folding my arms as I looked up at him. "I don't think we have anything left to say." His jaw tightened. "I've been looking for you for months. You disappeared without a trace. That's because I wanted to be left alone." My voice was calm, steady. "What do you want, Ethan?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I made a mistake. I see that now. I shouldn't have let you go." I let out a humorless laugh. "You didn't let me go, Ethan. You threw me away. There's a difference." He flinched. "I was wrong. I didn't appreciate you when I had you. But I do now. I want you to come home." Home. The word tasted foreign on my tongue. That house had never been my home. It had been my prison. I shook my head. I have a home now. It's here. With my students, with people who actually value me. His eyes darkened with frustration. "Emma, you belong with your family. Ryan misses you." A flicker of pain twisted in my chest at the mention of my son, but I didn't let it sway me. Ryan made his choice. He chose to side with you. He told me to leave. And so I did. Ethan looked stricken, as if he hadn't expected me to be so resolute. "Emma, please. Give us another chance. I'll do anything. I'll get rid of Olivia. I'll make things right." I studied him for a long moment, seeing the desperation in his eyes. Once, I would have given anything to hear these words. But now, they meant nothing. "It's too late, Ethan. I don't love you anymore." He staggered back slightly, as if the words had physically hurt him. "Emma." I stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "You should leave. I have a class to teach. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue, but he must have seen the finality in my expression. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the classroom. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, then turned back to my students, forcing a smile. All right, class. Let's get back to our lesson. As I picked up my chalk and continued writing on the board, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had finally let go of Ethan Walker. And it felt liberating. Days passed after Ethan's unexpected visit, but his words did not linger in my mind the way they once would have. The old Emma might have spent nights crying, replaying his pleas, feeling the pull of the life she left behind. But I was not that woman anymore. I had built a new life, a new purpose, and I was determined to see it through. The village had become more than just a place to escape, it had become home. The children at the school looked up to me, their eager eyes filled with trust and admiration. The villagers welcomed me into their lives with warmth, treating me like family. And with each passing day, my past felt more distant, like a bad dream fading in the morning light. But just when I thought I had closed that chapter of my life, Ethan returned. This time, he wasn't alone. I had just finished my morning lesson when I saw the commotion near the village entrance. Curious, I made my way toward the crowd, my heart sinking when I recognized the figures standing in the middle of the gathering. Ethan, looking more determined than before, and beside him, my son Ryan. For a moment, my breath caught in my throat. Ryan looked smaller than I remembered, his face thinner, his eyes carrying a sadness I hadn't seen before. But I forced myself to stay composed. Mom. Ryan's voice broke the silence, and he ran toward me. I instinctively reached for him, but then hesitated. This child, my son, had once pushed me away, told me I was unworthy of his father. The memory of that moment was still a fresh wound. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw something different now. Was it regret? Fear? Or was it just another manipulation? Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but insistent. Emma, we need to talk. I squared my shoulders. You had your chance to talk, Ethan. You wasted it. This isn't just about me, he said, gesturing toward Ryan. It's about our son. He needs you. I glanced down at Ryan, who was clutching the hem of my dress, his little fingers trembling. My heart ached, but I refused to let my emotions dictate my decisions. Ryan made his choice when he told me to leave, I said quietly. What changed? Ryan sniffled, his voice barely above a whisper. I was wrong, Mom. I didn't know how much I needed you until you were gone. My resolve wavered for just a second, but I quickly steeled myself. And now that Olivia has shown her true colors, you think you can come running back? I asked, my voice sharp. Ethan stiffened. Olivia has nothing to do with this. I let out a humorless laugh. You don't get to lie to me anymore, Ethan. You had your perfect family with her, didn't you? And now, when it all falls apart, you think I'll just take you back? Ryan clutched me tighter. Mom, please. I just want my family back. Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I looked at Ethan, searching his face for any sign of sincerity, but all I saw was a man desperate to fix the mistakes he had made. I shook my head. Ryan, I love you. But I won't go back to that life. Not for you, not for anyone. Ethan's expression darkened. So, you'd abandon your own son just to prove a point? I met his gaze, unflinching. I didn't abandon him. He abandoned me first. And now, I'm choosing myself for once. Ryan's sobs grew louder, but I forced myself to step back. The villagers watched in stunned silence, their respect for me evident in their eyes. Ethan's shoulders slumped, defeat written all over him. Emma, please. If not for me, then for Ryan. I sighed. He can stay if he wants. I won't turn him away. But I won't be your wife again, Ethan. And I won't be your second choice. Ethan looked crushed, but he nodded. I understand. And just like that, the chapter closed. Ryan chose to stay with me in the village, and Ethan walked away, leaving behind the pieces of the life he had broken. I had won my freedom. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone take it away. The days following Ethan's departure were filled with an odd sense of quiet. Ryan stayed with me in the village, adjusting slowly to the life I had built. He was hesitant at first, unsure of his place in this new world that was so different from the one he had known. But as the days passed, something changed. I watched as he played with the other children, his laughter ringing through the village like a melody I had long forgotten. He helped me in the classroom, sitting beside me as I taught, his young mind soaking in every lesson. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Ryan and I sat outside our small home, watching the fireflies dance in the cool night air. "Mom," he asked softly, breaking the silence between us. I turned to him. "Yes, sweetheart?" His little hands fidgeted in his lap. "Are you happy here?" I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "I am. More than I've ever been." Ryan hesitated before looking up at me with wide, uncertain eyes. "Then why didn't you bring me with you in the first place?" His words were soft, but they cut through me like a blade. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "Because I thought you didn't want me," I admitted. "You were so angry when I left. I didn't think you would ever forgive me." Ryan's lower lip trembled. "I was wrong, Mom. I thought I was supposed to be on Dad's side. I thought that was what I had to do. But I missed you so much." I pulled him into my arms, holding him close as he clung to me. "I missed you too, baby. Every single day." For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt whole again. The days turned into weeks, and Ryan flourished in the village. He made friends, learned to appreciate the simple joys of life, and for the first time, I saw him truly happy. But peace never lasts forever. One afternoon, as I finished my lessons for the day, I heard whispers among the villagers. I stepped outside to see a familiar figure approaching. Olivia Brooks. Dressed in expensive clothes that were completely out of place in the humble village, she walked with an air of entitlement, her gaze scanning the surroundings with barely concealed disgust. The villagers watched warily as she stopped a few feet away from me, her lips curling into a smirk. "So this is where you ran off to," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I must say, I expected better. I crossed my arms. "What do you want, Olivia?" She let out a laugh, shaking her head. "You think you've won, don't you? Taking Ryan, making Ethan regret everything? Do you really believe this is the happy ending you deserve?" I narrowed my eyes. "I don't need a happy ending, Olivia. I just need peace." Her smirk faltered. "Ethan is miserable without you. He won't admit it, but he is. And Ryan," she glanced at my son, who was standing behind me, watching her cautiously, "he's better off in the city. He shouldn't be living in a place like this." I stepped in front of Ryan protectively. "Ryan is exactly where he needs to be." Olivia's gaze darkened. "You don't get to decide that." A surge of anger flared in my chest. "Neither do you." She took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Ethan is considering taking legal action. He wants Ryan back. And if you don't come back with him, he'll make sure you never see your son again." My stomach twisted, but I refused to let her see my fear. I straightened my shoulders. "Tell Ethan he can try. But I'm not the same woman he once controlled. And this time, I won't back down." Olivia smirked again, as if amused by my defiance. "We'll see about that." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. I looked down at Ryan, who clutched my hand tightly. "Mom, are they really going to take me away?" I knelt down, cupping his face. "No one is taking you anywhere, sweetheart. I promise." But deep inside, I knew this battle was far from over. The days following Olivia's visit were filled with tension. I knew Ethan wouldn't let things go so easily. The thought of losing Ryan kept me up at night, but I refused to let fear dictate my choices. If Ethan wanted a battle, he would get one. One evening, I sat outside, watching Ryan play with the other children, his laughter filling the air like a soothing melody. Despite my worries, seeing him happy gave me strength. "Miss Carter," a voice called. I turned to see Headmaster Lee approaching, his expression grave. "There's a man in the village asking for you." My stomach twisted, but I steadied myself. "Who is it?" "He didn't say, but he doesn't seem like a friend." I exhaled, already knowing the answer. "Where is he?" "By the school." I rose to my feet and made my way toward the school, my steps firm, my heart resolute. When I arrived, I saw him standing there, his hands in his pockets, his presence as imposing as ever. Ethan Walker. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Emma, we need to talk." I crossed my arms. "We already did. You just didn't like my answer." He took a step closer, his expression troubled. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Ryan belongs with me. He deserves a better future than this." I let out a cold laugh. "A better future? Like the one where he learns to abandon the people who love him? Or the one where he watches you throw away the people who give everything for you?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is that you only see Ryan as yours when it's convenient for you. Where was this concern when you let Olivia manipulate him against me? Where was this fatherly devotion when you let me walk away without a fight?" He flinched but recovered quickly. "I made mistakes. I see that now. But I can fix this." I shook my head. "No, Ethan. You don't get to fix this. You don't get to rewrite history." His eyes darkened. "If you won't listen to reason, I'll take legal action. I have resources, Emma. You don't. You won't win." Anger surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You're wrong. I do have something, Ryan's choice. And he doesn't want to leave. If you really cared about him, you'd respect that." Ethan hesitated, glancing toward the school where Ryan was watching from a distance. His shoulders sagged, his confidence wavering. "You think this is what's best for him?" I softened slightly. "I know it is. Let him be happy, Ethan. Let me be happy." For the first time, I saw true defeat in his eyes. He exhaled, his posture slackening. "I don't want to lose him." "Then don't force him to choose between us. Let him come to you when he's ready." A long silence stretched between us before Ethan finally nodded. "Fine. But if he ever wants to come back, that'll be his decision." He nodded again, then turned and walked away. As he disappeared down the path, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The war was over. I turned back to Ryan, who ran into my arms. "Mom, is it really over?" I kissed the top of his head. "Yes, sweetheart. We're finally free." As I held him close, the village lights glowing around us, I knew that this moment, this life, was my real victory. And I would never look back.